Smooth texture is applied especially on your project by adding multiple layers. So this paper is smooth, so it's easy for me to keep it a smooth texture. I just do the normal process of tearing a piece of paper. I dip it in the glue mixture, make sure I get all the gunk off, just like normal. Apply it to the entire piece, and then apply to the project. For cardboard, you have a similar process, except for you just have cardboard underneath. You can see here it has kind of like a bumpy texture because cardboard has pieces in between it, and once it dries, the paper mache kind of shrinks and makes it smaller. So you'd need a piece of cardboard. You take your piece of paper, do the normal process of paper mache, and then apply it to the cardboard, making sure to rub into the area around it and apply it to the surface. Basket weaved is pretty smooth texture. You have to have quite a few layers of paper for it actually to be seen, since paper is pretty thin. If you trace it and have it all the same size, it's easy to do. If you're doing it over a larger surface, the longer the pieces, the better. You do the same process with the multiple pieces of paper. You dip it in the glue, making sure to get in between all those pieces so it sticks together. Now, basket weaves will take some time. You have to weave it, which means one is on top and one is on bottom, and then you alternate it. So here on this section, it's on top, it goes underneath a piece, and then it goes on top. So this time, this paper would be underneath. You've got a border around here, which it doesn't apply to. So I apply a piece, and if I continue this piece, it would go underneath, making sure to hide that seam because we want good craftsmanship. And since this piece is underneath here, this one here would go on top. This one would be on top on the final piece. The second one, we would alternate it. So we have to lift up that first piece, go underneath it, and it would go on top here, and then it would be underneath on this piece. So it's a weaving process. It takes some time. So this one's on top, underneath. This one would go on top again, and then I lift up the middle section and then go underneath. And then for this top section, that would be my last one since I'm running out of room. I would do the same process. So that one's underneath, on top, and it would be underneath in this last section. For the scaled one, you do the same thing kind of like as the basket weave, you just cut it into the shape of the scales. You dip it in the glue, making sure to get all those layers glued together, and then apply. And then you're gonna layer it, which means put things on top of each other. Now scaled, kind of like basket weaved, you want pieces to all be the same. So you can trace your one piece on multiple pieces. Again, just like basket weaves, you're gonna have multiple layers of paper. The thicker the better, because then you'll actually be able to see the texture. Since paper is thin, we have to have multiple layers to make it show up. And then with this one, you apply multiple layers and you'll kind of have like a scale texture. Kind of like the basket weaves, you'll want longer strips if you're applying it to a bigger area. For the wrinkled texture, it's pretty easy to do. You take your paper, and you want a pretty big piece because you're gonna use it in a smaller area. And you do the same process. And you kind of fold it in on it, because you want those wrinkles to show out. You don't want it to be slightly wrinkled. You really want to show the texture of the wrinkles. So don't kind of ball it up. You want to take your piece and then kind of fold it in on itself so you can show the wrinkles. Bumpy texture, again, is one that's pretty simple. You take a pretty decent piece, you get glue all over it, and you crunch it into a sphere. And then you apply to the project. Make sure to actually make it stick out. Once you're done and you have all these spheres put down, you want to put a layer of normal paper mache on top of it to kind of cover it up and make it look like just bumps instead of just spheres on top of it, because you want it to be bumps. You can also do it in a more controlled way. If you fold your paper in on itself over and over and over and kind of roll it like a cylinder, you can do a similar bumpy texture. Instead of just doing a sphere-like one, you can do a cylinder-like one, kind of like you would see on like if someone rolled their hair. So you'd apply it in cylinders. You wouldn't have to put this layer on top like you have to do with the other one, because it would already be smooth. So you take it and roll it until it's as small as you can get it. Dip it in the paper mache, get it nice and covered, all those layers of paper, and then apply it to the project. So there's two different ways to do bumpy texture. This one's slightly bumpy because as you would roll your hand over it, it's just be a little bump. This would be more showing it off. If you want to do one that kind of shows the texture off of the bumps, leave spaces in between the cylinders. Sometimes you kind of have to play with it. For the furry texture, kind of like basket weaves, you'd have to have more of it prepared. You can do multiple layers. Again, you want to fold it and keep it similar sizes, and then you'd cut little strips. So it depends on how thick you want the quote-unquote fur to be. Make sure not to cut all the way through it. You want to have some of it showing through and attaching together at the top. So you can see here on my example, I have smaller cuts, which you can do. Or you can make it thicker if you want to. You can also change the layer and how long the furry texture is. It just depends on what you want. You don't want to apply the paper mache to this because you want it to kind of be loose. You want to apply it just to that one area. So I just dip in that one area into the paper mache, and then I'd apply it on top of that other layer, kind of what I did with the scaled, making sure to rub it smooth so the glue sticks to it. curly, you would do the same thing. Just when you have it all furry and you have it all out here, you want to take it and you want to actually curl it and crunch it. Here it stays straight, here you curl it.